if you either want to give me a wave, if you can hear me okay, or make use of the chat button. So I have got you all on mute. So this will be your opportunity if you want me to answer a question as I'm working. That now is the time to use the chat button, and then I will open up the full discussion and bring you into the live discussion right at the end. So that's the bit of the video that I chop off that nobody else sees. So today is the third and final week of our autumn door wreath making, when the featuring. Oh, Sue, have you got a problem, Sue? Oh, I can't work out what you're trying to tell me, Sue. Can you find the chat button, Sue? Or is it because I have pinned my video for everybody? Is that what the problem is? Let me remove spotlight. Is that making anything better for you? I don't. Oh, Sue, I can't hear you because, of course, you're on mute. If you can find the chat button, Sue, I can see whether I can help you out. But I think everybody else is okay. I'm going to continue on, Sue. And of course, you'll get the recording afterwards, so you should be able to follow along. So I'm not quite sure what the issue is there. So it's the third and final week of our autumn door wreaths. You finish there? Will you just pull the door to? Thank you. Featuring dried flowers, and the inspiration for this door wreath is a tiny picture out of a magazine, and I'm going to be using this wire wreath frame, which if you've made door wreaths before, you will recognise as being the base of the Christmas door wreath. So a traditional Christmas door wreath, you would bind moss onto here, and you would put all the lovely blue pine and evergreen foliages on there. And I'll show you the picture that has inspired this. It's a tiny, tiny photograph out of the Country Living Christmas magazine, which was a lovely buy. I don't know whether you can see, but right close up there, I'll put the picture of this into the Facebook group. It has got one of these wreaths hanging on one of those trendy wooden peg rails, and it's just got the plain wreath with a piece of mistletoe hanging over the top and one of these paper baubles. So it's this, it's not that one there, it's that there that I'm looking at, absolutely tiny. So I think we sometimes fall into the trap of thinking like flower arrangers and seeing what our florists do, and we see a wreath ring like this and we think automatically Christmas door wreath. And we're going to be using this, but doing it in a totally different way. But the great point of this is, if you haven't got one of these already and you decide to buy one now to make this wreath, you could jazz up what we're going to do and add more fresh greenery as you get closer to Christmas, or you could take everything off and use this as your door ring for Christmas time, just totally, you know, take everything apart. The other ingredient I'm going to be using is the bind wire. So this is paper covered wire. That is, it's like a piece of string. I think Sue's still having problems. She's doing animated dance in the background. I can see you okay, Sue. So hopefully you'll be okay. So this is the paper covered wire, and the beauty of this is, do you remember the twist ties from sandwich bags that we used to have in the probably in the 70s and 80s? And it's that action, you twist to tie. So it's much easier than using a piece of string, and it's much softer on your hands than traditional wires, and it looks decorative. Now I've got a green reel here. And it also comes in a beigey tan colour. I think actually out of preference I would have used for this project the beigey tan, but I only had the green to hand, so I didn't want to go out and buy anything special. So Joan is saying she's got both of those items. That is fabulous, Joan. And then what I'm going to do, over in my box over here, we went to the woods at the weekend, and I have been foraging in the woods, and I have got some vine here. So I think that's probably a honeysuckle vine, or perhaps even the wild clematis. And then I have got some stems of silver birch, and this has they've cut down loads of silver birch in the woods, and it's still got the leaves on it, so I quite like the leaves. And I've chosen this because the materials are quite pliable. I can shape them round. apart from that bit there that's just broken. So you want something that is bendy and will be supple enough to follow the circle of your wreath ring. And yes, Sue's caught my dog making, you've had my husband's hand and the dog's tail as well. So yes, stealing the show. So I'm going to put that to one side to begin with. And then I've got my camera on the side here. So I am going to pin my working camera. So I think I've got the option of spotlighting it for everybody. So I am going to spotlight that, and hopefully you can all now see. So perhaps you can let me know whether that camera angle works for you. Good, I'm getting a thumbs up there, so you can see what I'm actually doing. So I shall move those out of the way for the moment. And then I just need to, it's a bit trying to work out where to put things. That's too far away, bring it forwards. I found the perfect spot for working with. So I'm going to take some of this binding wire and I'm going to cut off quite a long length, quite generous, perhaps 30 centimetres, sort of elbow to fingertip length. And I'm going to cut, I don't know, 4 or 5 pieces of this. Hopefully then I won't need to cut any others throughout the making process. And I'm cutting them extra long. I mean, you'll see the reason for that in a while, because I'm going to continually tie with these bits. And if I wanted to, and particularly if this was the beige, that I would be able to have the beige bits and the wire still showing. So this is the beauty of this finish, is that it's decorative and functional. Then you're saying, is the vine from Ivy Trails? And yes, the vine isn't from Ivy Trails, but you could use it. So we have got lots of the vine like ivy growing over our fence, and it would be really good to use. And what I would do would be to pull all the leaves off your ivy, so you have just got the trails, and that would be lovely and supple. That's what you're after. Something that is supple enough that will make its way around the circle you're making. If things are too dry, as you try and make them into the circle, they're going to snap and they just crunch a little bit. So the odd bit that dries and breaks is fine. It's just you don't really want to be making a hexagonal or an octagonal shaped wreath, unless of course you do actually want to make a wreath that colour. So what I'm going to do first of all, move those bits out of the way. I'm going to go to the halfway point on my wire, and I'm going to bind it on. I'm just binding it on to catch hold. So I find this easier to do where you've got the upright. So I've got the 2 rings and they're held together by these little uprights across. And it's just easier to anchor them around one of those uprights because they don't slide away. So I am going to go number 1 with the long trails there. And then number 2. And I'm doing these on the inside. I think I might alternate it actually. I might go inside, outside. So wrap that round. So I've wrapped it round, and if you want to, you can give it a bit of a twist together. The intention is to get these fixed on whichever way works best for you. So I'm going about halfway down, and it gives me two pieces of string, for want of a better word, that are approximately the same length. They don't have to be the same length, so don't spend ages thinking that you've got to get it exactly right. It just needs to be approximately the same length. I should have cut 5 pieces because I've got 5 uprights. So we'll work with that for the moment. Actually, I went on. I'm going to come and add in my last bit. So what I do with my reel, same as a string, I keep the sticky tape on the outside edge and I pull from the middle, and that way hopefully the whole ball doesn't collapse. So halfway down again and wrap it down. So you can see as I'm working, I haven't even started work, and the little dangly bits on my silver birch have started to shatter open. So there's a lot of dust and detritus on my desk. So that is what we've got. First of all, we've got the wreath frame, and I fixed on some bits of the bind wire, and that's what's going to fix my trails in place. And then I'm going to take my wreath, my my vine here. Now you'll find is the vine, I've kept this one. When I picked it, I sort of lassoed it around in my hand, and I've kept it stored in my workshop in a vaguely rounded shape. So I have helped it stay round, but you always get a little bit at the end that's a bit thicker, a bit chunkier, and a bit straighter. And so I'm going to cut that bit off and get rid of that because it's just too straight. And then holding the vine onto the circle of my wreath frame, I then take the strings and I put them either side of the woody bit. And this is where you need about 3 pairs of hands, because of course as soon as you let go of it, it pings away. And I take the string either side and I twist it round. So that is now holding. I'm going to add in the bit that's right at the end, the same thing. So basically what I'm doing, if I get another bit of string and show you, oops. This is what I'm doing close up. So I've got the piece of string there, I'm laying the twig over the top, and then I'm twisting it to hold it in place. So that is what I have done. So imagine my finger underneath is the wreath frame. I fixed the piece of string to the wreath frame. I've laid the piece of twig or the branch over the top. And then you can imagine if I was going to put another bit in, I would tie over the top as well. And that is why I've kept the tails long, because I'm going to stack my pieces of vine and my branch on top of each other to create a bit of depth so this wreath isn't going to be flat. Now the dog is now growling, so I hope you can't hear that. But I think we've discovered from previous videos, if I don't talk direct in front of the screen, I don't think it picks up the side noises, but he's obviously seen something in the garden. So round to the edge there and tie in. So twisting round. And then coming around again. So flicking one of the wires either side. And I think when you come to do this, it'll make sense as you do it. So twisting round. And then I'm back to the beginning. So this wire here was fixed on the inside, and I'm thinking now perhaps I might like to take the stem on the outside edge. So what I could do is just get that wire, the paper covered wire, and I'm wrapping it around the edge, bringing it across. So again, I've got a piece on one side and a piece on the other. I just need to bring that round so I can travel a little bit with it and then twist it again. So that's all I'm doing all the time, is laying the piece of the natural vine across the middle of the 2 ties and then twist tying them together. We're coming back here. And then everything's pinging all over the place. I've got it tucked up under my arm in order that it doesn't whack me in the face. So twisting round. And you don't need to stick to these 5 pieces. I'm coming in again here, and I think actually on this middle bit, it might be easier if I add another piece of wire. It's not a game to see how how few pieces of twine you can use. So use as many as you think you need. And if you don't like the look of the paper covered wire, you can snip that off so it doesn't need to show. But for the moment, I am keeping it long. Now you can see here my stems are starting to branch a little bit. So can I encourage them to move round a little bit? And I think they will play ball with me. But you can see here that's starting to create a nice bit of movement. It's got a bit of a 3D effect. So I'm just working with a natural branch. I haven't designed that in. That's just the way, Mother Nature intended. And it's got a nice loop to it. And that's creating in itself a nice bit of movement. And as I work down the stems, they're becoming slightly thinner and more malleable and easier to use. So it's the beginning stems when it's a bit straight and tough. You can see here that first bit there just look really straight, and then it will twist around. So I'm reusing the fixing points. So again, pulling the wire either side binding them together with a twist, as if I am wrapping up my sandwiches to go to school. And here, bringing it round. So separating out my wires. Where do I want to fix this one here? On the outer edge, I think. So I put one on one side, one on the other, and then twist again. And I'm going to go down the whole length of this stem, just to get everything in and tight. And then this is when I would, when I've done a full round here, I will then go back in with my finer twigs, with my silver birch twigs, and add in some more. So it's one of those things where you decide how much material to put in. So because we've now been shown, we've now been given permission by that magazine picture I showed you of just the bare wreath frame hung up for decorative effect, that we don't, it's sort of breaking away from tradition. We think about a wreath. Now, I think if I said to you, describe a wreath to me, a door wreath, you'd all start to describe something that was Christmassy, you know, a circle filled with blue pine and berries and Christmas trimmings. So it's breaking away from a norm and embracing the season. So this is quite, it doesn't look Christmassy because I haven't put any Christmas bits in it, but also it's nice to have something on the door that sort of embraces the season. Now I'm getting to the end here and I've just broken that piece. So I think I'll choose a good place to cut off and get rid of that. So that at its basic is a very simple door wreath I could then put on the door, and you can't particularly see where the frame is, and because it's the golden colour, the rose gold is really fashionable and it will disappear from view. So you could be really avant-garde and just hang this sort of twiggy nest up on your front door, or you could start to build it up a bit more. So I'm going to bring in some of my silver birch twigs and working out, and just by bending them in my hand just to see how pliable they are and how much of that woody stem at the end I can use. So I'm going to chop off the last bit because that's just too stiff and I can feel it's going to break. So I would do exactly the same thing as I did before. Find a pair of the paper covered wire, the binding wire, and lay it on top and twist it in. And then bend it all the way around. Now this bit of exposed frame here, I think I might like to bring the silver birch round just to disguise that a little bit. So I could either add in another wire. I think I will need to because that wire's not quite in the right place. So I'm going to add in another wire just under here. I keep calling this bind wire all sorts of things. So I hope I'm not confusing you. So when you're playing this back, if I say string, wire, twine, it's I mean the same thing, the fixings. So I'm wrapping that round twice, giving it a twist to hold it in place so it doesn't slide around. Making sure you can see it just there. Separating them out, laying the silver birch on the top, and then twisting to tie. And depending on how tightly you twist, you could crunch everything down and twist it tightly, or you could let everything spring up a little bit. So if you wanted a really neat, compact wreath, I would say crunch everything down and really pull it taut. But if you want something that's a little bit looser and lighter, just give yourself a couple of centimetres, and then your stems will sort of bounce around in that couple of centimetres gap. So you've got that option of really clasping it down so it lies flat, or giving it a bit more play so it's got a bit of lightness and movement in between. And then these twiggy bits that are just the tips at the end, I could just lay them out so they just splay out naturally. Or again, if you want something neater, you could tie another bit of the twine in and tie them down to hold them in place. I'm going for a slightly messy look, so I'm going to leave those twigs there as they are, and then come back in with my next bit of birch. Again, cut off the chunky bit at the end, and then at this time I may not need to actually attach the end. I may find that I've got enough of the twigs I can just slide it in and then make use of the next bit of string. If I turn that round, I'm hunting for this bit of string. So my string, which I thought would show up because it's green, actually on the camera is looking, is quite hidden. So when you're working on it yourself, you will be able to see where it is. So I have finished again here. There's nice fine bits here. I've got, just by coincidence, I'm just in the right place for my next fixing. So I'll get my next little bit of stem, and I've been putting my stems in individually, but if you want to speed things up, you could put them in groups. So I've got 3 stems here. I'm going to cut off the bottom bits because they are too stiff and they're just going to break, and then I will lie those onto that last bit of fixing and then tie those in like so, and then bend them round, and on the way I'm passing another fixing, so I might as well make use of that and come along and bind that in, and then keep going round. So this is quite a long piece, and I think I need another fixing. So just to cover up this exposed bit of wire again on the frame, I might attach another bit of the twine down there just to hold that in place. So you can see a sort of skeleton of the original frame, but it's not full on. You know, I'm thinking, I don't know whether I'm that avant-garde. I could just put a bare frame on my door. So I'm going a halfway house. I can sort of see the skeletonized look, but I am trying to cover it up. So you would then, depending on how many twigs you had, keep going. And you can see here, if I can get the camera angle right, if I lay my hand across, it's got quite a depth to it. It's almost as if I've made a very wide cylinder. It's about that. Well, let's go with my little finger. It's a little finger's depth. So it's not a flat wreath. And if you added in more materials, you could have quite a tall wreath. Imagine, you know, an elongated. Imagine you've got a polo mint. So my wreath at the moment looks like a conventional polo mint, but if I stacked 2 polo mints together, it would be higher at the sides. And the good thing about that is that if you wanted to trim it up for Halloween, you may be able to get some tiny gourds or things like that to sort of rest on this bottom shelf, so you could decorate it like that. And if you don't like the fact of it's growing, the sort of cylinder look to it, you could just start to weave in your materials more naturally, or just stop adding materials in when you think it was getting too thick. Now, we did say that each of these wreaths had a dried flower element to them, so I'm not going to count these little leaves of the silver birch as my dried flower element. I've got some hydrangea with me, so I'm just going to reach across and get those. So these hydrangea, I don't know how old they are. I'm guessing they're probably a year old, and I thought I would attach them a bit like confetti. So do you remember last week when we did the helichrysum wreath, and we started off with an area of interest on the edge and then petered out the placements. So we had like a chunky bit here, and it petered out and it almost met around the edge. This time I'm going to, as if imagining that I'm just placing the pieces sprinkled, you know, as if you're going to put hundreds and thousands onto a cake, you're just going to scatter it across. And what I'm going to be using for this is my floral adhesive. So this is specially designed by Oasis, and it's for using with fresh flowers. You could use a hot glue gun for this. Probably a PVA glue isn't going to work so well because it's too slippy and slimy and takes too long to dry. But this glue has been specially formulated to work with flowers. So what I've got here, I've got a saucer here, and I'm squirting the glue out onto the saucer. It's clear, the glue, and it's a glue that is really handy to use because you don't need to use it straight away. And in fact, it works best. I'm just laying my flowers in there and turning them upside down. It's one of those glues that sort of has to air dry a little bit before you use it. So I'm dipping the flower heads in, and then I'm turning them over so they don't glue to my saucer, and putting them on the side. So I would say normally, oops, I'm getting caught up by the trails. I think I might put that in position straight away. But you could glue up, 5, 6, 7 of them, and then come back and place them onto your wreath. however you want to do it. So these flowers are really lightweight, and whereas with last week's wreath with the helichrysum, I still haven't put that outside. I have got it resting, propped up in my mantelpiece. But I think possibly with this wreath, I might feel more confident about putting it outside. I've got a sheltered north-facing porch, and I think because the hydrangea are, well, for me, they're in plentiful supply. I've got loads of dried hydrangeas around the house, so I'm not too precious if they get damaged and they die, you know, they fall off. Whereas the helichrysum, which I spent, gosh, how much did I spend on those? It was probably about £10 plus about £5 postage. I just feel that they're probably a little bit too expensive to have, and just to you know, leave them up to the will of the elements, so to speak. So because this is such a lightweight glue, instead of just putting the flowers on the base, on the main base, what I could do, I'll turn it around here, is pretend they were actual flowers on the stem. So that will stay there, that I can have it right on the edge there. And that helps with the natural movements. So you're not placing all the flowers, they're not lying flat and squat and round and just stiff and low. If you pick out the stems as they rise up, where they've naturally not wanted to conform, and you can put a flower on the end of each one. And it might help you as well with trying to create that sort of random look. Now, this is one of these things you need to concentrate on and not really be doing it on camera at the same time. And I'm conscious of the fact that the video doesn't pick up the detail of what I'm doing. So what I will do is I'm going to finish this off in my own time. And as ever, I will put a picture into the group, and also when I send out the video of the recording as well, to see what you are looking at. So what I'm going to do now, before we open up to questions, I'm going to go back and make my video. I'm pinning, is that back on me? I hope that's back on me. So if I lift that up, I'm going to move that out of the way, and to give you a better idea of what I was doing. And that's I was trying to show you that it's got some depth to it, you know, so it's a little finger depth. It's not flat. If I hold that there, you can see that the materials are round, but perhaps I can just see one tiny bit there of the original wreath. But you can imagine when that's on your door, or you've got it hanging up indoors or propped up indoors, the metal frame has given me the guideline to keep it all circular, but it isn't totally obvious. And then you could leave it au naturel on the side. You could start to add in natural, you know, greenery if you wanted to keep the leaves on your ivy trails, you know, put the Christmas pine in come Christmas time, or if you want to sort of bring it up a level designer wise, I think that's probably a good view there, is to stick dried flowers, and I've used the hydrangea here, just to catch on these bits that stick up, and that adds another little detail. In fact, I prefer it like that than having them flat on here. I just think it looks a bit leaden and not quite so attractive. So we are 10 minutes till closing, so I am going to unmute you all.